Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mindful Mornings at Sunrise. I'm Tracy Gerlach, your host, and joining me today is Rebecca Marcus Mangerel. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Tracy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And we only just met last week, I think, over Zoom.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us so quickly. And where in the world are you coming from?
So I'm in the New York City area. I was practicing out of Manhattan when we were in person, and now I'm in my home in the New York area.
Did you flee the city like most did out of New York? Or are you still being a trooper in there?
Still in New York. I did go upstate for like a couple months initially, um, but yeah, it seems to be okay right now. You can hear the
I can hear
sirens.
the city. Yeah, I can hear the city. There it is. Good. So tell us what you're doing. You are a therapist. Tell us about your practice.
I'm a psychotherapist, and I specialize in anxiety and relationship issues, and I take a trauma-informed approach. And I integrate different modalities depending on, what's the right fit for the client. So I pull from some evidence-based modalities like CBT, ACT, mindfulness-based interventions, and then also bringing in some like interpersonal, psychodynamic approaches, somatic approaches. Um, I work with adults in their 20s and 30s, as well as teens and some preteens, tweens, I guess we're calling them.
And I saw something I really loved when I was flipping through your website was that you have a holistic approach. So will you tell us what that means and why it's important?
Yeah. So that's something that's definitely important to me. I actually, before I became a therapist, I was trained as an energy healer. And so I did a lot of research in undergrad on the mind-body connection, and just kind of understanding the ways in which we hold emotion in our bodies and how stress and mental health are very interconnected. So it really informed my work as I moved into becoming a psychotherapist. And certainly with trauma, there's a lot of information on just kind of how it's stored in the body, especially like initially when somebody experiences trauma. Sometimes it's not always really processed, so they may experience some somatic symptoms. So that's kind of really informed my work. But I guess in terms of holistic approach, it's kind of looking at not only a person's emotional experience, but also physically, kind of what's going on in their life. Like, are they exercising? What's their diet like? What's their social relationships like? Like external factors, even taking in kind of like spiritually, if that's a part of their experience. And I just found that this is, for me, like a more complete picture to work with a person. And I do like to also kind of collaborate with other providers as well. I think you just get more of like an integrative, complete like treatment plan with that. So
Yeah. I think it's so important. I studied positive psychology and we have a green cape, red cape model. And red cape is when clients are in crisis. And it's so hard to focus on anything outside of that crisis. And I think mental health, we get stuck in that crisis orientation, right? Where we're just extinguishing the flames and we forget that the whole person is much, much more broader than that tiny bit of crisis in that moment. So that's awesome that you do that.
Totally. I mean, I do think like in terms of crisis, it is kind of looking at that, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because obviously if somebody's in a crisis, like we have to kind of stabilize them first before we can look at, like self-actualization or career or like higher purpose. But yeah, no, I guess it's sort of like keeping that still like with the framework of how you're treating someone.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned trauma-informed mindfulness. I had a very brief period of time where I was able to study under Dr. Michael Boehm of the University of Pennsylvania. He's kind of a front runner in the the
Oh,
research,
wow.
which was really cool. Yeah. But I remember him saying, he was talking more about mainstream mindfulness meditation, but then mentioned like if you have trauma in your past, you need to be really, really careful. And I kind of got like an angry feeling. Like, not only do these people like had their lives disrupted, now they can't even be mindful like the rest of us. So I don't know. Can you explain that a little bit and why it's different and important to be different?
Certainly. Yeah. It's definitely something that comes up. I think as mindfulness has become sort of this like hot buzzword and it's moving more into just like a general space of like wellness practitioners that aren't necessarily therapists, um, there's less of just kind of like an understanding about like the effects of trauma or the symptoms of it. Um, and so specifically meditation could potentially be triggering or like uncomfortable, not always, but for people that maybe haven't done a lot of like healing yet around their trauma or maybe aren't even aware that they've experienced it. Having like your eyes closed for a extended amount of time and kind of it could sort of evoke some of the painful feelings that you're not aware of or like states of dissociation. And if there's not an awareness of what's happening, it can be very uncomfortable and almost kind of exacerbate some of the symptoms. So I think a big part is really for like practitioners of mindfulness or like teachers to just have some awareness and education around like what trauma symptoms look like. And a big part of it in trauma work is providing education for people on like kind of the traumatized brain and how it's processed in the body and what some of the symptoms are, and teaching people some basic grounding skills. So really providing like choice and consent with trauma survivors around mindfulness. So, saying like, okay, you don't have to close your eyes. Like if you want to just soften your gaze, and kind of being aware if they seem like they're dissociating or if they're feeling uncomfortable, like giving them some options. If this doesn't feel good, this is another option for you. And also letting them know that sometimes people, I found this like relaxation can be a trigger for some people that have experienced trauma. So like that hypervigilance, in a sense, it's like been protecting them. If you think about kind of like a fight or flight, what happens when, just in general, like when they go back to kind of like cave dwelling days, they talk a lot about like if a person was like attacked by a wild beast, like it was beneficial for them to go into like fight or flight. And that happens when people experience trauma as well. But the difference is that like often the traumatized brain, it doesn't recognize like the difference between past danger and like present. So something like a loud noise or maybe feeling like your eyes are closed and, even in like a yoga class, like a teacher putting their hand on someone without permission could be triggering. So I think it's kind of keeping some of those things in mind, and certainly like informing the client or like the person, in the mindfulness class or whatever. But I think it is important for just like practitioners, wellness practitioners to just get like a little bit more education around it because it is becoming very mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's interesting. So for trauma-informed practice, it's just like a mindfulness around the mindfulness for the practitioner that's guiding, and for like if I were someone who has experienced trauma and I know what to look for, if I can feel myself becoming triggered, then I can open my eyes, I can leave the room. But that awareness is probably pretty key, right?
Yeah, totally. And just feeling like they have more agency and options around what they want to do. Also like providing different points of like anchoring and grounding, so it may be like comfortable to close your eyes, but for some people it might not. So maybe like they want to get up and stretch, or maybe some people it's like, okay, feel your feet on the ground, or like the use of like essential oils, or it's different for everyone. But I think, yeah, a big part of just trauma treatment in general, I really think, is helping the client to have education around what their body's doing, maybe how it has been protecting them. And they can also start, like with doing more kind of like active forms of mindfulness, like more informal practices. So like engaging your senses while you're walking, kind of like focusing on, I like this one, like picking a color to focus on. Like maybe while you're walking outside, you pick the color green, and then you're sort of like, okay, this tree is green, the grass is green, the sign is green. And it kind of anchors you in the present. Or like even, like washing dishes is one that people can use, or like taking a shower, but kind of just beginning to help people with maybe things that are a little bit more active if they don't feel comfortable with meditation, or just starting with like very short periods of meditation.
I started with, as I walked, I would hum a song in my head or sing a song in my head, just like the chorus. And it was always this very vulgar song from the early 2000s hip hop. But it went perfectly with my step rhythm.
Right.
And that was a fun way to start.
Yeah, I think music can definitely be very soothing and like help us to be present.
Yeah. So would you be able to walk us through a more trauma-informed mindfulness practice right now?
Sure.
Okay.
Like an exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one that I like. It's kind of like a mindfulness for like an uncomfortable emotion, which I think can be helpful. Yeah, so we could do a little version of that. Because, a lot of times it is just for trauma survivors, and I'm sure you guys do this work at Sunrise, with kind of building like emotion regulation, understanding your emotions, just learning how to sort of tolerate it as it comes up. So I think that there can be like visualizations that are helpful for that. So sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you want to just sit comfortably, and you can close your eyes if you would like, or you could just soften your gaze, whatever feels right for you. And just taking a moment to check in with where you are today. Feeling your feet on the ground, feeling the weight of your body on the chair or the cushion, and just kind of noticing any tension or tightness in your body, any emotions that are present, and just kind of beginning to visualize a beach or the ocean. We're going to compare an emotion just to the ebb and flow of a wave. So just beginning to notice yourself potentially at maybe a beach that you've been to before, or just picturing a wave, kind of noticing it as it moves towards the shore and away. And whatever emotion is present, just kind of imagining the emotion as it ebbs and flows. Noticing how, as you look at it from a distance, just like you would look at the ocean, it may feel more intense. But as it comes toward you, you can see it's a little bit softer and less intense. And just feeling the cool breeze from the ocean and the sun warming your face. And noticing how your breath also ebbs and flows in this way. And knowing that the emotion will ebb and flow. And at times it may peak and feel more intense. Just watching it like a wave. Noticing the ebbs and flows. And just allowing yourself to just breathe gently in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just paying attention to how you can change your experience of the emotion as you just allow it to gently ebb and flow. Knowing that you're safe in this moment. Feeling your feet on the ground. Feeling your body on the chair cushion. Just taking a moment to notice how the emotion feels, where you feel the emotion in your body. Just noticing without trying to control or change anything. And taking another inhale into your nose and exhaling. Allowing yourself to just come back to the room, feeling maybe other clothes on your body, feeling your back against the chair. And as you feel ready, your eyes are closed, you can open them, or if they are already open, you can just relax.
That was so lovely. I love that one.
Oh, good.
I love it. And it fits so well into DBT too, in that these are our emotions. And so we're not judging our emotions, we're figuring out what to do with them. Do we need to tolerate them? Do we need to fix the problem that triggered them? What do we need to do with it? So that visualization, I'm sure, is so helpful.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this actually was this specific one. It's like from a book, and they adapted it from a DBT, like emotion regulation scale. But I find like you have to also be mindful with visualizations with trauma. So this is like a more neutral one, but there have been ones that people go deeper into, like imagine like spirit guide or things like that. And sometimes those can be traumatized, like re-traumatizing or triggering. So like neutral ones that are more brief, that kind of focus on just imagining sort of what the emotion looks like giving it some characteristics, I find can be more anchoring. And also it's like you're learning about like, okay, the emotion goes up and down. It won't last forever. It may peak. So people know like, okay, I'm at a peak, but it's going to go back down.
And everyone loves the beach, right?
Right.
Most people
do,
anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rebecca, if you could have the audience take one most important thing away from this chat, what do you think that would be?
I think that mindfulness, like if we put too much judgment on ourselves, like, oh, I'm doing it wrong, or I should be doing more of that, we're kind of, well, we're not doing it wrong, but just to kind of notice wherever you're at and to offer yourself compassion and some curiosity, and just sort of notice more of the process. So even kind of like, oh, today's a little bit more of a stressful day for me. I'm having a harder time focusing, and just kind of bringing yourself back I think those are good places to start with it. And just kind of knowing that there's all different types of mindfulness, there's all different types of meditation. And I think for me personally, like it's kind of ebbed and like it's changed based on like where I'm at or how things are going. So to be sort of flexible with yourself, because it really can be integrated into a lot of different practices or experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great advice. And thank you so much for being on with us today. It's kind of spur of the moment. So we really
Yeah.
appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom with us. And I'll put your website in the write up to this YouTube video so everybody has access to learn more about what you're doing.
Okay, great. Yeah, this has been so much fun. Thanks, Tracy.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Have a good day.